Hi all and welcome to An Evening with Thomas, and this is Chloe with part two of her story. And I know many of you enjoyed the first one, and I've no doubt you're going to enjoy this one as well. And so we're going to introduce Chloe again. If one or two members of the MeWe can give me a sound check, I would appreciate it. Hi Chloe.
Hey, Tommy. Yeah, it was interesting feedback from the first one, and this one's going to be much more natural. I was reading because those visions are very detailed. I can tell them off the top of my head, but I'll miss some things. So I was reading, and that's why it might have sounded a little automatic of me. I had a lot to cover, and a lot of that part one is going to be referenced in this part two. Yeah.
So, something about that song. You seem to like that song about releasing pain and things you feel bad about and crying and wailing.
Yeah.
And
because if you don't release it, you just recreate it, which is part of what I've been going through again, in a much higher ladder rung way over the last 3 years. And you need to cry to release stuff, and then you can forgive yourself. It's as simple as that. And you also, in that process of crying, you see where you were responsible, and you see where others was responsible, and that helps you forgive, because big stuff that we're carrying inside of us that is lifetimes ago to this lifetime is hard to face, and we need to let it out. And if that's screaming and kicking and crying into a pillow where you don't actually hurt yourself, then that's the way it needs to be. And I've done a lot of that. I used to go to a Reichian therapist, which is all about kicking and screaming and ringing pillows with your hands to physically bring up what needs to come out. This is the part where it's good to be triggered. But something that you often talk about that goes to one of the first visions that we spoke of, that we shared in the first part of my talk with you, was the 45-50 split, what you call that. And so off and on, I'm going to refer to how I lost my footing, and how I think you've said this on the shows recently. It comes in waves, of being able to work on our stuff. Yeah. Going into dark places in ourselves to regain more light. Shane talks about that. There's a reason why we need to not just let that depressed or pissed off mood go. We need to look at what's underneath that feeling. And, I've been talking about doing shadow work for years. You and I kind of really started the wave of doing that back in Cosmic Voice. Yeah. It's just that because I've been working on it, obviously, from the visions I was telling you guys about, that I've been working on it all my life. None of us is any better than another. We're just at different points.
The key with 45-55 is all about the balance, and not going off center. Everything in life is dualistic. It's extremes, and waves come in, and there's different waves. Obviously, there's the galactic wave, there's the inner sun wave, there's the source wave, and various other waves that are interacting. And the key is not to get too high and not to get too low. And I tell people on the shows, ride the wave. So if you're on a downer, ride it. If you're on a more pleasant, just ride it the same.
Yeah, well, this is where you and I differ, so I'm going to get more detailed about that. Good. How do you ride the damn wave? So
some of us have a bit more patience.
Yeah. Well, I've body surfed for years when I was younger. And when you're in those dark, depressed, or angry places or reactionary places, you're in the turbulent white froth wave where you kind of just have to surrender. Otherwise, you get ragdolled and you hurt yourself. You know, like if you see a reef coming and you stiffen up and you go polarized, you get stuck in that one, posture of fear, you're very much going to hurt yourself on that reef. Whereas if you relax and give in to what you're feeling and discover what's underneath it, you loosen your body up, then you'll kind of like skimmer over the top of it. Sure, you'll get cut by a few sea urchins, but it's about not ignoring what feedback you're getting from people out around you. I mean, a lot of the visions that I had when I was younger, which is the core reason why I told them, it wasn't to show off, it wasn't to blow people away or get anything ego. It's about to be able to bring up these deep concepts that it took me decades to articulate. Yeah. You know, the micro to the macro. There's things in space that look just like the neurons in our brain. You know, we are part of everything. And if we're going to stay with this creation and in particular what this planet is doing and not drop away, and we'll get into those visions later. Yeah. We need to ride the wave, and that means not ignoring stuff that's going on underneath in our unconscious. And I was still trying to ignore it because it was really heavy stuff. If anyone listened to part 1, you have some hints of what I'm talking about, and I'm going to go into some others later in this that are much more heavier, and that had to do directly with my breakdown in context to what was actually going on in our household. And my accountability right now is why I'm here talking to Tommy. And it's for an example of like how to get through this, because I feel better when other people feel better. You know, I'm
it's
just
all
like
about the topic of accountability, is it not? And being able to stay in the heart. And yes, it comes in waves, and people need to learn to ride them in a better way and not go to the extremes, and going within in the right way. You know, too much of life is external and not enough internal. This is the big problem. Yes. Once you go internal, and I spoke of this recently about connecting the two brain hemispheres, which opens up to the third eye, which then leads to the connection to the heart once work has been done. And that's something like similar to what Sethigus explains, whereby it's, if you look at it, it's the sword, you know, whereas the Catholic Church, when they do the crossing, the sword's upside down, it's inverted. And that's what they want you to be, inverted and not in balance, certainly not in heart, and everything in mind that they can corrupt.
No, that's what the original Templars had, was the inverted cross, and they made that out to be evil. But he calls it the mine and the hedge, or Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. So, and that's exactly what I got stuck in, is I was trying to process a lot of really deep memories that I haven't related yet. And my thoughts, with the programming that was still instilled in me of insecurities and low self-worth, was making that processing be way out of kilter. So I wasn't able to attain the triality, the third point, the upward, the tip of the sword, which is Wode, which is connecting to, like, it's like the wow moments. That's what he calls it. And I've definitely had my share of them. It's moments where you're just walking down the street and you see animals do something in front of you that connects something for you, you know, to what you're thinking at the moment. Always pay attention when you see really strange things. and there's like a certain glimmer to it or a potency to it. Connect to what stop and remember what you're thinking about at the time, because it has to do with what you were thinking about. You know, I was constantly being told I read too much into things. I was seeing omens everywhere and quotes. But this was my creative child mind that wasn't too programmed yet. You know, so, yeah, it's a heart wisdom, you know. And that's what you're speaking to a lot more now, and I like that. Yeah, so it's really interesting how much the ego has been coming up lately, and how much of what's behind it is fears, and these are in the thought hemisphere of our mind, and the memories that come up that are fearful, you know, really trigger that. So there's an imbalance between the hemispheres, but it's not really the hemispheres of our mind. It's a concept, thought, and memory. And those are actually, Hugin and Munin are the names of Odin's crows, that blackbird that flew up in our pendulum vision, you know. So it's going to seem like I'm going to go around in circles, because I have to, not in circles, but I'm going to skip around a bit with this, so you may need to listen to this more than once, but I have to do this to explain the core wound that I was facing, that I think has versions in almost everyone else here. So we've talked about this before in our chats before these calls, about the how important staying in our heart is, like you said, right? Yeah. And you mentioned this to me a lot before I took off in 2016, and I was so unable to stay in my heart. I was really kind of freaking out internally about what I was trying to process, and struggling with my programming still. Like I said, the low self-worth, and I knew consciously it was like ridiculous, but I had to get down to the bottom of it, and it has to do with the Cry Like a Baby song, because I needed to cry like a baby. I needed to release so much, and it's only been over the past like 8 months that I've been able to stay in my heart more and more. It's just coming in greater frequency, and it has to do with just a choice, right? The heart has its own toroidal field, its own vortex of energy. So it is essentially protected by our other bigger toroidal field, our whole auric field, right? Our sphere of influence, right? If you look at the glyph, the astrological glyph for the sun, it's a circle with a dot in the middle, right? It's almost like it's a cell too, right? Micro to macro. That is a symbol for the sun. The dot, our heart, you know?
Yeah, something I used to see. I can still do it. Mm-hmm. The dark spot in the middle of the sun. Mm-hmm. It's what I understand to be the infinity point.
Yeah, the alpha and omega point, the 0 point of our energy. And it also is for a galaxy, for a universe, right? It's where we generate our energy from, you know, and everything that they've romanticized the heart to be about is actually true, you know. Compassion, unconditional love. You know, these are hard things that it's to do constantly in a world that really doesn't seem to give a shit. You know? Yep. But the more, like, I've started meditating for an hour every day again, and I hate my job, but all of a sudden I find myself being able to, like, just stand there in my heart while I'm, you know, having complete bullshit just blasted at me. And I'm not smiling because I know that'll piss them off, but I'm smiling on the inside. And it's not getting to me because I'm in my heart. But I'm also, before I do that meditation where I'm sitting in my heart to reinforce it, the connection to my spirit, I shield up big time. I reinforce that outer vortex of energy. You got to do that. You have to do that every day. Anybody who wants to get to where Tommy's at, or to at least be working on it like I am, you gotta reinforce your auric field shield and make sure that it's just your energy within it. Then you sit in your heart and you keep doing that every day until it's second nature, and you start to have there's no other way to put it, but like just visitations from your spirit, you know. I had my mothers show up on me the other night, and you know, mothers I've never even met, and they just stood there and they were with me, you know, and that was exactly what I needed, you know. So this is how we get in alignment with our whole self, you know, as we learn to get more and more comfortable in our heart. And I don't think that would have been possible for me if I hadn't done all that crying and freaking out and going to that dark place in me to figure out what was there that was keeping me stuck, you know. And I was so stuck, I didn't hear you when you told me back in 2016, when you warned me.
Yep.
You know, I was frozen on the spot in my pendulum swing, and I wasn't going to get unstuck until I released the trauma of this lifetime to my past lifetime, of that the programming from society, from religious lifetimes, from brutal war time lifetimes, was that, you know, that's hooked into all of that, you know. I had to process it. It was overwhelming, especially alongside others' unintegrated shadow, you know, reacting with my own, you know, and vice versa. My reacting with theirs, you know, it's like a static field, you know, and we're all pulled way out of heart at that point, you know. But it's good to be triggered, because it
Not
means
sure
you
everyone
can.
agrees with that.
No, it's good to be.
I know it is, but I know. I'm just making a joke of it because I know some people get triggered by some of my pieces in the shows, and he's done it again. He's triggered again. Yeah. So but it is good.
And if they're saying it that way, in that way, they're being accountable to it. You know, why does that piss me off? Or why does that offend me? You know, because there's something to it, right?
Yeah.
You know, and they teach us things. You know, other people can teach us things like nothing else can. You know, like the dark places that you can go to in yourself about when you sit down and you think about why you're so pissed off or why you're so depressed. They can teach you stuff if you have self-love and self-respect. That just the choice alone to start loving yourself more and respecting yourself more can help you look at that stuff more honestly and start releasing it, you know. You know, and in that way, being triggered is a gift, but you need to have, you know, most of the time you could trigger me and I would work through it. You've seen me do it, right? But I just got to a friggin' wall and I couldn't get past it. And the stuff that I was remembering, I think you just weren't on the planet at the time. If you'd gone through it, you'd be just as messed up as I was. Well, it's kind of a joke, but it may be true. I have a feeling you haven't been in here the whole time, but you've been in here when it counted.
Yes, I'm not that stupid.
Thanks. You hear that, everybody? He's trying to piss us all off. And why does it piss us off? Well, you know what? I'm glad some of us were smart enough to stay out, and just because it's like fresh reinforcements, right?
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, you know, so it's good to be accountable. You know, every time I've been accountable to my choices, including this latest wave, I am more comfortable in my skin. And that's true for everyone, you know. Confidence and confidence is really important. And you get more confident when you've got less internal lies to self and others going on. That's just a sticky web. Yeah. You know, we are spirit. And we've manifested, we've incarnated in matter. You know? So what we do, our actions in matter as spirit, is really important. And if we've got a bunch of stuff in us that we don't want to look at because it's so painful or so uncomfortable, our actions could just make it worse. And yeah, I posted a self-sabotage and resistance video. I hope Tommy posts it to the page. It's awesome. Kind of talks about this in a lot better way than I am, but it is conceptually, I think, clear. So, yeah, the part one, I'm sure there's a lot of people that not only, you know, could tell that I was reading or that I sounded, you know, kind of dry. I was trying to get through a lot of stuff that I felt that I needed to share to be able to have this part make sense, right? And some other people probably just were like, what, that's just not real, what she described, you know, and it's up to you what you believe. And it's very important that people find their own truths. I think a lot of people have had experiences in their life that they've almost not even, you know, don't even remember, that were just as off the wall and potentially just as teaching.
Yep.
You know, the whole reason why I'm here is basically my mission here now is to stay in my heart, be an observer, and come out and speak from my deep place of healing that I've obviously been in since I was born this lifetime, to help people recognize the way that we've been traumatized, the way that we've been in basically a Stockholm syndrome and deifying things and people and concepts that have been murdering us for lifetimes. And the goal is to get people to realize that how they've allowed themselves to be controlled by the dark magicians.
Yep. There's a couple of things there. We'll get into dark magicians in a minute. But one of the more extensive, it seems to be every week now, on the shows, op-ed pieces, I spoke about this lifetime being a strong possibility, if not reality, that the living souls here now are correcting not only themselves, but also their whole family line.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing you as well as I do, your family line has been a sense of trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma that has perpetuated through several generations, and you kind of bore the brunt of that.
Oh yeah, I was straight up blamed by my mother and 4 sisters for everything my father did, which is ridiculous, you know. And I seriously, I paid for it, you know. They one sibling tried to kill me in the crib, you know. By the time I was in my 20s, and you know, she told me to my face, "I've hated you since you were born because of your father." I just looked at her and went, "Thank you for that truth." Like I didn't know it. I did know it. You know, and that's her flailing around in her pain. You know, I know that what happened to her in this lifetime that has happened to her before. She's stuck on being a victim. And I made the choice when I was young. I think you did too, because you didn't recreate any of what happened in your first family. No. Is you make a choice not to be like that. You know, okay, that's how not to be. I'm not going to do that with my kids. because this feeling here now sucks, and that's what I did. I was the first female child of my mother's 4 daughters and 1 son that didn't recreate the physical and sexual and psychological abuse. I broke the cycle, but as far as in existence in my father's side of the family, that side of the family's fought on every war on this continent going back to 1812. I mean, I am a dual citizen, Canadian and American, but, I've had shared lifetime memories of war, and I've had my own past lifetime way back times of being a soldier. I know what it's about. And that's incredibly damaging to our men. But I think what the women do is far worse. I mean, when my dad left and they didn't have anyone to blame it on, they turned it on me, and then I watched them do the psychological abuse on me and all the grandchildren and blah, blah, blah. It went on. And you know what? That was far worse. Far worse. So it's been, what am I, almost 50 now, right? It's been 30 years of releasing, and I'm pretty good. I feel like I'm pretty good. I am not done. This is a never-ending process for all of us. Yep. But this trauma that I'm talking about, this mundane trauma, is what the dark magicians, they want us to have this sense of powerlessness. This is what they want us to feel. And they also are perfectly aware of what our spirit, our soul, and other incarnations has been through. And because of this sense of powerlessness, it's like they purposefully do symbols and movies that superimpose the reality we experienced in other lifetimes, even if off-world in other worlds. They wrap it all up into the movie or the sigil or the new law that came out, and it's purposefully done to trigger this sense of powerlessness and trigger this trauma, so that we don't want to look at it. We just flip back into that stuck place, that polarization, or off our middle point, off our heart, and we just let it keep on rolling that way. And this is how magic works. You have to give consent, and because of the way they package it, kind of subtly in there, it's so true to the original trauma. We buy it, hook, line, and sinker. And that's how we get spells put on us, basically. And once we have a spell put on us, and we don't know where inside of us that it's hooked into, what trauma, and we haven't released it, we're basically hooked into their circle, their sphere of influence. And there goes your life force. Same with AI. It copied our magic. It copied our core essence of our hearts and everything we generated by recording all the traumas we'd been through. And because of our ignorance of what we are internally and where we're hurt, it got our energies and our frequency emitting whatever we're feeling and thinking, was mimicked. Our technology was mimicked into theirs, and I had, that was a big part of my breakdown instead of breakthrough from 2016 too, is I went into the AI simulation crap, and it really sucked me in for a while. It dropped me from my real work, from healing myself, and that's how you unhook from the matrix is by doing the shadow work. I mean, I wrote a huge long document that's been copied all into all sorts of other websites and blogs with no credit to me. It doesn't piss me off. It's out there. But it's about doing the shadow work, right? You know, and Saturn archetypically was always about our life lessons. That's why it was co-opted to be part of this technology. It's ironic, but everything that was meant to help us has been co-opted quite thoroughly on all levels of things wanting to play God, play creator, play creation, mimic creation. And we have to start to be able to discern that. And, you know, I'm sure I could rewrite that document now, but I'm not going to bother. I could just talk about it, you know. So, it's a Nietzsche quote that, I think Carl Jung also used too. The tree that would grow to heaven must send its roots to hell. So this is that upward pointing sword, the unbound sword. You know, the roots is the 3 points of the sword hilt. You know, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. So processing and balancing those. Don't separate them anymore. It's no longer hemispheres. They're one thing, but you do need to unpolarize yourself in your thoughts and process the memories and let go, grieve and let go of what needs to be so that your sword is upright. You know, that's the roots to hell, you know, and then you've got the heaven point, the tip of the sword, and the moments to woad, to connection to, basically all the wisdom that you think you don't have access to anymore. You know, everything your ancestors and your DNA has experienced is accessible there. And it only comes in tiny moments, even now for me. And, but they're everything.
Yeah, you cannot go into the heart center with the hemispheres fighting. This is why you have spoken about this in a recent show. You know, you have to, if you're going to reinforce left and right brain thinking, you're playing the dualistic dance of war within your own head. There's enough people outside of your head that wants to make your head dance with war. Why do it yourself? And this is the key aspect, is only you fix you. So no left and right brain thinking. You are the brain. And when they merge, which was the original version of this human, there was no hemispheres. When you merge them two, you're then creating the fulcrum of the sword. You've still got your two arms, which is the left and right hemisphere of the brain, but by combining them, you've then got the fulcrum and the balance of the sword. That then creates the upward connection to the third eye, which they've done all kinds to try and cut off, for the very few who are able to merge the two hemispheres. So then you've got the handle of the sword. You cannot go in the heart center without those three. It just doesn't work like that. You have to have mastery of the mind and the brain. You can't go, otherwise, if you attempt to go heart, you're then dueling with the mind. And so the mastery of those three are the key. That's your real triality. You're not the Father, Son and Holy Ghost. That's your real triality. And when those three are mastered, you are then creating a chord that goes to the heart, which takes over the thinking. Not the mind, which can be corrupted with technology, which we all know.
Well, that chord, it's like a portal sitting in your heart, because everything else in perspective completely changes when I stay in there. And thought isn't bad. What's bad is the programming. is how we've reacted to life, right? And I don't think you have as many past life memories as I do, so you didn't have a lot of like, what the hell was that about? You had a lot of current experiences that were, what the hell was that about? But there, so when you're working with merging and treating your mind as a whole, the thoughts and the memory, it's a different experience for everyone. But you always have to process, and it's really good to have people to talk to, and that's why it's good to have these groups, to be able to network with each other and help each other figure it out. But there's also, you have to know when you're not in a good mindset, when you can't hear people that, like yourself, Tommy, that I should have trusted and been able to hear, I couldn't because of where I was at, and it comes from seeing the things that I've seen, there's no denying it. The astral realm, the fourth and fifth plane of existence, has been bound, overlaid here by our own unreleased trauma. Symbolically and physically, we have like literally a huge pile of trauma, and that's taken advantage of by the dark magicians with their entities to attach to those wounds, and that makes it the life force, energy feeding frenzy, that we basically allow by being reluctant, resistant to looking at why we do the things we do and what are the thoughts behind it and what's underneath those thoughts. This is what makes disease in our bodies. Cancer, you've said this, it comes from the astral.
Yep.
I was already partially awake, but I remember nursing and having flashes, working on people's wounds from cancer, just holes right in their bodies, right down to bone, doing their dressings. And I've had flashes while I was doing that of this weird, sick web of body parts cut off from people that have had cancer, and this sort of weird pulsating web that was connecting them all, and just, it was obvious, like I didn't know, wasn't aware as I am now, but it was obvious this was some sort of astral feeding off of cancer in human bodies, but it was separate from us in the astral, right? So, I remember coming out of the room and just going, well, that puts a whole new meaning on phantom pain. That's what amputees experience, right? I was going, and I just have to shake it off because I'm at work, right?
That's the little gremlins at play, and I mean gremlins.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. They have been covered in movies, and they are real, and they're the ones that chomp on people.
Yeah, and you don't even have to have cancer, just any injury site, they'll be hooked into it.
That's why it's important with the shielding.
Yes, it is, and it's very important to have a confidence and belief in yourself that you have just as much right as anything to reclaim your sphere of influence, your whole auric field as your own, and yours alone. You have that right, and you really have to go into it with that mindset. Mindset's everything. It is bloody everything. Mm-hmm. That River of Humanity on Fire vision I had this last, was it November, December? That was, that's just the more I look at that since I've had it, and the more I feel the collective read of people out there. I'm not on Facebook much, so I don't get to see the drama, which is good. but I get enough of it, I read of it in like daily mundane life. People need to get on fire, and the fire is truly, it's the origin of it is our hearts, which is where our spirit comes from, and that is the creational fire. And the fire cleanses all of the bardos, the negative states that I saw people flash through in that vision. And I hope the next one is just a water-filled river, because we need to get there, and I'll get to it, why we need to get there. But, you know, I hope I'm making some of this clear. You know, there's a big part of this that I want to get through to people is about our connection to all life here, and how real the spirit realms are, you know.
Yep.
But we got to get over this creating hell on earth and being unhappy with ourselves and unhappy with the world. We've got to find the kingdom of heaven within. Yep. You know, and the crown of creation at the tip of our sword, the topmost energy center in our body. There's more above our bodies. So it's all about figuring out, you know, where we don't have to, we are our own kings and queens, not anyone else's that lies to us, like this next song, right?
Yes. We're going to have a music break, and we'll be back shortly with more from Chloe. Heaven and Hell. Hi all, and welcome back to An Evening with Thomas and Chloe, part 2. So we've been covering quite a few things, and I was just been checking on the chat, and Russell says to say hi to you and thank you for introducing THI to me. It changed my life, he says. So Russell wants to say hi.
Did I introduce THI to him? Hi, Russell.
Apparently so.
Huh. Thank you. You're welcome.
I want to go into about speaking our truths, and get your comments on that. You know, truth is kind of painful. Well, it is. It's brutal at times, and it's also flexible. You know, what may be truth one day may not be the next day as more information comes forward, and it's important to me that, you know, I have corrected myself a couple of times on the show when different information has come in. Because it's important we get the truth. For too long we've just been fed a whole stream of bullshittery, and and whilst doing that, it also helps others with their truths and process and form, and then hopefully evolve their own truths. Is this what you're trying to achieve with your blog and what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I haven't done any blog posts lately, but just working on myself. Yeah, well, that's what you just said there is basically, so I know you enough, you question everything, but not coming from, this is the thoughts thing, that part of our mind, right? Not coming from insecurity. You question it, and you're accountable, so that keeps you open to new information. And yes, truth evolves because our perspectives evolve. If we are continually processing and observing and questioning things that come in front of us. But if we're coming from a programmed state, victim, martyr, savior, ego, I know all, or I know nothing, low self-worth, then that processing is going to be retarded.
Yeah. Well, this is this is kind of what Alan from Circle of White Light. I don't know whether you'll be familiar with Alan from Open Your Mind Radio.
I know Alan. He's a sweetheart.
Well, he's him and Steve. I think Steve's taking a sabbatical, and Alan's doing the Circle of White Light Radio, and he talks about psychology a lot, and the fluid belief system.
Yes.
And that's kind of what you're explaining there.
Yeah, the bird lands on the open hand, you know, and that's about being relaxed, right? Not in that wave, tensed up. Oh shit, that rock's gonna hit me, or I'm gonna hit that rock. You gotta just relax and let it come, you know. And I was getting pretty anxious in the last few years with my resistance to what I had to process internally. So when this Mono World Holding Trust came, it tipped me over the edge. Not only was it conceptually something that I've never been into politics or financials. I know it's messed up, but my focus has been on spirit, and you guys should get that if you listen to part 1, right? And so it was really kind of like out there, you know. When I was helping Forum and the People's Club, I drew up all the documents for it. I spent a lot of time talking with Kim and working with you and writing up the parameters for it, for the actual, the People's Club. And so I saw those numbers. I knew how it was to work. I helped you to put it to words with the place that we did it with. And the AI stuff was coming in, and I just kind of overloaded, and I questioned everything about it. But I've realized now, not only was I in an outward, because of my internal trauma that was going on, processing what I was doing, having to face within myself that had nothing to do with you or anyone else, I reacted and I projected. And what I've realized over the last, and I knew it at the beginning too, but I lost, this is the 45-55 balance. I went into projection mode. And I shifted into, wow, this is just all about money, and it's never going to work because we're not going to change the governments. But I knew from what you were telling me about the experiences you were having that it wasn't really about the money, but I lost focus on that. And I just went, it's just not going to work. And all of this isn't true. But I've since calmed down. So the reactions, my thoughts that were putting me out of balance about what the People's Club is about and what Mono World Holding Trust is about and what Kim is doing and what you're doing came back into focus. And I realized that it's really about breaking that outermost veil of deceptions here, essentially the money magic, the dark magic magicians with their money magic system. And it speaks to more of the masses for you to address what's going on in politics and what's gone wrong and how they're screwing us over money-wise. It's speaking to the masses to wake them up from that. And then they'll have the next veil of occulted knowledge, which isn't bad. Occult means hidden because it's hidden from us, because if we knew it, we wouldn't be letting them do it anymore. So, what I'm trying to say is basically, this new God, this money God, we need to just wake up to how we need to stay in our heart, because that's really where security comes from. It doesn't come from money. When we go in our heart, the money takes care of itself. So I now believe in what you're doing and what Kim's doing. I got real sloppy with how much I got judgmental about it, even though I knew the behind the scenes stories. And it was purely just from my resistance and flailing in that fighting the wave, So yeah. I know it's not just about the funding.
Yeah, it never was.
Yeah.
Money doesn't really interest me, as you'll know.
No. You're about helping people. You always have been. It's not always worked out well for you, but you keep doing it.
Yeah, I have to wonder why sometimes, both Kim and I. Some people think THI is about Manor Wealth Holding Trust and the People's Club. It's not. You know, it's far from it.
It's about education. It's about getting people to burst that outermost layer of deception in this world.
You know, thinking and acting different,
Mm-hmm.
caring and sharing. You know, basics really. We have to, as a species, go back to basics because we've lost them. And some people still think, you know, the THI is about the funding, and it's so far removed from the funding when you really understand what life, this planet, the solar system, and the universe has gone through, and the energy harvesting system, the work that Kim's done, and I've done, and others dotted around the world, is about removing the energy harvesting system known as the Federal Reserve and the banking system.
The dark money magic.
Yeah. Pieces of paper have no value. That's the top and bottom line of it. I know it's
well, it's a value we put to it. That's the whole point of this deception, is that we've been put under a spell to think a certain thing is valuable. And what is really valuable is how we treat each other.
Yeah. What is valuable in life is life force energy. You cannot buy it. You know, and the idea that bloodline families and all the other ilk taking seducements and getting pieces of paper in return for life force energy, which they then transferred onto the people in forms of slavery, life force energy, and stealing all the planet's assets. You know, all of it's now contained within the trust. And so what the trust is about is returning life force energy. That's the top and bottom line.
And the planet's assets are the planet's life force energy.
Yeah, some people, you know, everything about value is numbers on a piece of paper. Pieces of paper have no value.
Well, that's what you...
About value, what is value? Well, creativity is value. Well, then you get a Van Gogh painting that's worth $4 million, which looks like a load of splodge on a piece of paper, and then you get fantastic artists. We've got them in our own group. Madeline Brannan, Karen, and numbers of others. I think Perla as well. Numbers of them. And yet, if they sell their patents and say that's worth $4 million, which is actually better than the $4 million patent, people just laugh because they've applied that ego and been told that these people are more important than them, so their value of that patent is more important than them. No, it's not. Creativity has no value.
Yeah, it was like a communication error. My processing retarded my communication because basically I could only... Once I got stuck in that place, I could only perceive your work to break the deceptions, the spell around what is worthy around the planet's assets, the planet's life force energies, and what we spend we work to make money, right? And then there's the haves and have-nots, and it sets us up to fight each other, you know, to envy each other. And the people that are, and myself, I was included in them, that was passing judgment on you and what you and Kim are trying to do, you know, a lot of those people I know for a fact want money themselves.
Yep.
Are they generating it and creating it from staying in their heart? You know, I've been doing daily meditations over the last 10 days to stay in my heart. Guess what? I just manifested a better job.
Good.
You know, that's how you do it.
You know, and
this is the key.
You'll remember the 30 hours of calls with Kim when it first started over that rather long weekend.
Oh, I know. It was mind-blowing, the things that we were connecting. Yeah.
You know, and Kim asked me, wasn't exactly an interview, but it had elements to it. You know, I asked a lot more questions as I didn't want to be the new Neil Keenan
Nope.
or somebody else, you know, collateral account this and collateral account that, and white spiritual wonder boy and Five This Trust and Saint Germain, which never existed to begin with, you know. So,
Yeah, but people believe in it, and they
yeah,
still do out there in that bloody New Age thing.
you know, Nasara, Jessara, and the last thing I wanted is to repeat it. But Kim
Oh,
asked
and I knew
me,
that. Yeah.
Kim asked
Yeah.
me a question. I think that the answer suggested that this is the guy we want to go forward with. And the question was, if you were the trustee, what would you do with the funds? And my answer is get everyone the 5 basics of life first.
Yep. Yep.
You know, energy, clothing, water, food, and housing. There's billion. You know, I know people are struggling in America. I have myself, and there's people struggling in England and Europe, but it's nothing in comparison compared to some of the other regions of the world. It's not even funny. You know,
No, it isn't.
and to them, this is what I try to get people to understand in perspective. To them, we live like kings.
And we do. I know.
You know,
You
so
know.
that was my first answer. The second answer was we teach people with the end goal of not needing money.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah, and that's why I had, you know, again, my retarded thought processes at the moment. I knew all of that going into it. Then the AI stuff came in, and then the memories that were triggered around when the AI overlay was placed around over top the natural one, and the ensnarement, the entrapment of the spell of into the various forms of energy harvesting, the dark money magic system, the you know, the disease and ill thinking, imbalanced thoughts that hooked us up into getting hooks into us by entities, by the dark magicians, basically the whole multi-layered energy harvest system, you know, that I was seeing in stair steps over years and years of my life. You know, it all just came cascading down on me in the last 3 years. And I thought I was processing as it went along. But when the big core wound came up in me, I passed judgment on it. I lost my perspective. I forgot that you are so upstanding with stuff and so it's hard to put this stuff to words, but you know, it was one of the easier things I had to forgive myself for. And it made it a lot easier because you're very forgiving. You know, I wouldn't be talking to you right now about this, honestly. But the level of judgment and misunderstanding around what you're trying to do with Kim is, you know, is something that people need to just let go of. You know, if they're passing judgment and making assumptions based on little sound bites and not really hearing the entirety of what you're talking about, then they need to look within because they're passing judgment on themselves.
Yeah.
You know,
and I challenge any of them to come and live in our shoes for 5 minutes, never mind 5 hours.
Oh yeah, no, I lived with you enough years to know that it's not easy. It's not easy, you know.
So, in your present mindset, what's the way to stay in your heart? How are you going to go forward with that?
Well, it's going to be making the choice every morning to spend some time lighting up my outer vortex, my big sphere, and sitting in that dot in the middle, sitting in my heart, and just keep doing it every single morning that you wake up, you know, and keep at the inner work, keep processing and clearing my sphere of influence, clearing my aura, making sure that everything's as close to balanced in there, and what I pick up that's not what's bothering me, I'll zoom in on, if it's a thought or if it's a memory, and I'm just flying through stuff, but it really takes a daily commitment, and you have to really understand that our thoughts lead to our behaviors, and those behaviors lead to actions that result in outcomes that we are responsible for, and then there's the outside dynamic of other people's work or choice to not work on their stuff, that it causes a static, and you might have to decide that there's a lot of other people that you've let influence you, that you need to let go of. And then you have only what you do to yourself once you let go of people, what is in you that allows the continuance of self-sabotaging, the imbalanced thoughts that lead to the behaviors and actions, we have to work our way inward like a peeling onion, to heal. The surface wounds are more apparent. They're the first to be healed, that's why it was, you and I are talking right now. It was easier to forgive myself for thinking that you were doing something that was wrong, because that was recent. What made me come to that judgment and that conclusion was some of the oldest, stickiest wounds deep inside of myself. And that's why you do the shadow works, because if you've got drama going on, conflict happening in your life, there's something in you that you need that's at the core of it. It's not something external. The external is just a static sort of interaction that is a triggering gift to show you it's there. That's why pain is happening. Pain's to show you a problem, physical pain and psychological, And it's all connecting to, like you were talking about, our genetic memory, our ancestors, our mothers' mothers' mothers, and our fathers' fathers' fathers, and our sons' sons, and daughters' daughters. I mean, everybody. So you just got to keep at it. It's a daily choice, And
there's a lot of distractions. A lot of masks which are fallen, which we did forecast in our show going back 2 or 3 years ago. We've spoken a lot about the hooks and how those hooks do not help us release the core wound behind the actions and the misbehaviors and reactions and triggers, like
self-medication.
Self-medication and drugs and drink and other self-harming behaviors.
Yeah.
All that we need to face up to.
There's a hungry ghost behind each and every way that we sabotage ourselves. That is for sure. Gabor Mate is wonderful about that. I actually, he used to come into the hospital that I worked at. I've spoken with him. He's quite an amazing man. So my core wound. We got to get into this. So the first part of my talk was cut off when I brought up a certain group, the Scarlet Sisterhood. So this is a soul group that came from Sirius, and they're dark sorceresses, and they've been working with before this is before the destruction of what I've called Tiamat or Maldak in the past, but it's actually Tara. It's the planet we're on now, but the planet is actually not a sphere. It's more like a pear shape because of the damage from this planet star killer weapon that was aimed at this planet. But this Dark Scarlethood allied up with with the men who basically wanted to play God here in this galaxy, in this universe. And I know my wound has to do with them. It has to do with the mother wound, and the female wound, because I have certain memories of seeing the damage that they did here. Sathika's Black Earth Productions, he did a video called the Jedi. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. The Codes of the Nartmanog. He mentioned them, and once he mentioned them and described them a bit, my heart started to just bound out of my chest, and I knew there was something to it. And I've had some experiences over the last month since I heard that video that speak to some of the visions that I had in childhood, that I know that they were involved with messing with me, and they've just done a lot of damage here. This is the Syrian magicians who are behind the MK Ultra and other programs, covens to harvest and subvert our life force energies here. And even, if, like I said, the commodities of the resources of the planet, that's and of the suns, And
for the benefit of listeners, humans are a resource to them.
Oh yeah, we most certainly are. Yeah. Even our body parts. Yep. Glands. Every single and it has to do with that inner sun. The micro to the macro. Again, part of the concepts that was passed to me in my visions. From 7 years of age on upward. We all have creator in us, creator energy in us, and connecting into your heart will be more possible, staying in our inner sun, as the planet has an inner sun, and that inner sun is the core drive for a planet. It's like the stars, the suns, the actual suns, they're just bigger versions. There's, I had this, the first time I took off from you, I had this vision that, I returned to you shortly after it because it released something, this memory, the feeling and the sight and the realizations that I had from this vision. My consciousness came out from the planet. The planet's getting smaller and smaller, and then I could see the galaxy. And then I go back even further, and I could see the whole universe. And I see billions of galaxies and billions of suns, and it's just beautiful. And then I see this dark spiral of death. I could feel it. It was I can hear Obi-Wan in my head. It was like it's like a disturbance in the force, a feeling of, I saw all these, and I'm questioning it, and I'm going, what is this? What am I seeing? This dark spiral, and I could feel the heaviness of it. And it was like there was for a moment, the galaxies that were present, that were alive and whole lives and whole planets and whole suns that were there blinked on, and then they went out as if to show me the response to my inquiry. What am I seeing? And I realized that this is the result of the war, the hole that got blasted through this membrane, and all the vampiric, the ones that didn't want to do the work and wanted to just take the life force energy from this creation. So it was like a disturbance in the force when I saw them go light up and then go out again in this whole big spiral across this whole universe. It was like 1,000,000 times the death of Aldebaran. It was, and so I was speaking to someone who's out there who does videos right now, they're very focused on the Abrahamic Trinity triad thing. So I don't really listen to them anymore. But I was speaking to them when I had this vision, and I know who they are on a soul level. So oftentimes when I'm talking to people, I pick up visions of things that they were involved in. That's all I'll say about that. But interestingly, I heard this person relate this very vision on one of their talks as if it was theirs. It was my mistake for telling them what I saw, right? Yeah. But what they left out was the end of this vision. So I'm sitting there beholding this dark spiral of death that is obviously the result of the psychological virus or just the feeding off of this creation. And then I'm just grieving, beholding this. And then I see and hear conceptually, it all comes down to here. This can be undone and remade anew. And it's our choice. And I literally saw that whole spiral zoom back down, come back to life, and come down to Earth, which is micro to macro again. Earth, as a seed planet, is the tip of the sword. All of us that were here at the beginning are here now at the end to bring into the new. And we are beginning in the new. We're at the beginning of the end and the beginning of the beginning right now. But it really is down to us. You know.
It's people don't recognize their own power.
No.
And their own choice in matters.
No.
And this is the big problem. People
feel like we're a tiny drop in an ocean, but that whole ocean can do this.
Yeah. The pebble in the pond only creates one ripple. But if everyone throws their pebble in, you've got a tsunami. And it doesn't require a tsunami to tip the balance. This is what people don't understand. Well, I've wrote a piece for this Thursday that's similar, so I won't go too deep into it. But the whole thing is about attaining the inner goal of attaining balance and working on healing. I've mentioned recently it's all about healing, letting go what has got us stuck. Stop being polarized in thoughts. That's the left and right hemisphere fighting each other. Why would you want to do that? And eventually, when you stop, if you continue that fighting, you're just separating yourself from your true self. You become an avatar, and then you add in the pendulum swings and then everything's this or that, black or white, Labour or Conservative, Republican or Democrat, red pill, blue pill, no pills, thank you, and going into the balance.
Yeah, the triality.
Into the triality. The triality then leads to the fourth mode, which is the heart. Earth is an anagram of heart. Let's not forget that. Is that a coincidence? Maybe not. So what have you come to understand by all of this?
Well, like I've said, this wound for myself, it was seeing the Shane podcast, I talked about my father wound. I talked about how the burden that was. But, and this is me going from the outermost, most obvious wounds to the core. And now I've gotten to this one around women, and I've always known since I was a kid, with the way that my parents were, that I had to be my own inner mother and father, right? But that evolves and changes, right? And you fall out of your heart and you stop being good to yourself. So you stop being good to others and you go back and, and it's just been a wild ride for me. All the experiences I've had, I know that they've been now I know consciously that it's been an initiation process. And I think that perhaps this has been going on for a lot of other people, which is why I told those visions and those experiences in part one. So for those of you that kind of relate to it, that understand it, you're going through initiation and you need to recognize it. And this initiation is back to your true self in your heart, connected to your spirit, connected to all that your DNA and your ancestors have experienced, good and bad. It's all wisdom, right? And I know some people probably, I think you related to me, some people said that I was very brave to share all that, and I don't think of it that way. I mean, I know that if, say my employers heard it, they'd be like, oh, Chloe's crazy. Yes, I'm insane. I'm working on it. We got to wake up to this war on us. And the outermost war is the financial and the political war, and we got to pop that, and that's what you're working on. And I'm good with that. And you've been weaving in more and more spirit, the Levashov stuff, which is where I've been at. I'm coming at it from that point of view. And this is what the truths are. Truth is a perspective. It's a perception. My perception got limited because of my resistance to what I was having to process. So I passed judgment on the tangent that you were coming at it. Each one of us has a forte, a strength that we will speak to, and we can't judge others for speaking to things in a different way than we do. That's part of the beauty of the seed planet. This is the diversity here.
Yeah, essentially, right? The work with the trust, and way before the trust also, was all about the what I call the inner war.
Yes.
Most people are not familiar with that inner war, but we have sufficient that can deal with that type of incidents, things that play out on a massive scale in many ways that then impact the external.
Yeah.
And that inner war had to be won, or sufficiently to then be able to change what is largely the external. And part of the trust was inner will was bringing down their financial money magic Babylon Orion money system.
Yeah.
That was stealing our life force energy. And then I said to people, people all wanting the external war, and I get that, but they may not like the external war. They have to understand that also. The external wars will be seeing the funds come out. It means we've won the external war, but you cannot win an external war without having solved the internal war. And there's two aspects to that.
Yeah, it has to go from within to without, and without to within. Yeah. And that's a balance. Why have you, and me and others that have grown up in literal wars in their mundane first family home lives, been able to get where we're at? And how can other people do that? Well, they have to look at their first family, this one life alone first. The internal war is about not just balancing your thoughts with your memories of what happened to you and how you responded to it, but it's also about balancing your masculine and your feminine. And that's the core wound for me, is around I've healed with my father. I understand. I spoke into my grandfather. I understand what happened, but in the end it was what the women did that was much worse. So that you got to deal with, you have to keep chunking at it and keep making that choice when you wake up to stay in your heart, and you will get gifted with the moments of wow, moments of woe, of moments of the triality that bring you understanding so you can release a bit more, raise your frequencies a bit more, right? But the masculine and feminine, that split within us is part of what that original trauma that almost all the souls that are here now went through, which was the cataclysms that destroyed the planet that we were on in this galaxy. And then the genetic modifications that they did to our bodies, and then the societal levels, and then the financial levels. These are the veils that I'm talking about, but we have to work our way back through them and destroy them and remake them from the wisdom that we get from within. You know, it's this envy, this ego, this low self-worth, this all of that, it's not helping us. We have to let it go, you know, and that's that pendulum swing, you know.
Yep.
It's the inner mother and father, you know, coming into balance so that we can play the roles, be what we were supposed to be here.
Yes, it's kind of been difficult because of the programming. Divide and conquer is the classic one. Male and female is another. You know, black and white. It just goes on and on and on and on. When, you know,
it's all about energy.
What I do know is the changes in the grid energy took place in June, and initially it was male energy only, which corrected certain parts of it, but eventually it needed the feminine balance to come in and reinforce that grid with masculine and feminine balance. And
we're talking about the galactic wave of energies, basically, and this is from micro to macro. Men and women make children. We generate energy to bring vessels into form for souls to come into life here. You know, it's about energy generation. And what you're talking about with the grid, because I felt that in June, that was quite something to adapt to, but I did. And yes, you're right. Whenever anything's been created with just masculine, it's imbalanced. You know, you need both, right? A mother and a father, you know, and on the macro of it, there is the logos, the cosmic logos. I'll get into that more in a bit, but so how you work with this, how you ride the wave is you look at how your parents were and you look at how you reacted to the memories of what you carry in you now from the experiences of them for you. You know, this is part of why they societally destroyed our parents by making us work so much that we couldn't be a parent anymore, to distract us from being able to do our inner work. You know, that's part of one of the reasons I remember when we were first introduced to Kim, I said like, oh great, money will help people to be able to focus on themselves, right? They won't have to work so hard to survive and they can focus on their inner work. Well, guess what? If everybody got money right now, half of them or more than half wouldn't focus on themselves. They go out and buy dumb cars.
Yep.
You know, the yin and yang symbol. No, symbols are huge. They run our world. You know, these symbols are so old. They trigger our genetic memory going back millennia. You know, and again, there's that dot in the middle of each kind of teardrop curve, right? And that's about masculine being inside of feminine. And it spins like a wheel because it's about life force energy generation and regeneration. You know, regeneration is the feminine. It's the more subtle. Life generation is the active. It's the masculine. You know, and this all, you know, it's all interconnected, right? So.
Yeah, I think I'd like to just step in a minute here because I came up with something recently, when I was looking at the yin and the yang, and people see it two halves, and this is kind of atypical that we all do. We don't see the broader picture.
Yes.
We only focus, and because the programming as well is telling you there's a yin and there's a yang, black and white, and there's white and black. But what people miss is that's contained within the circle, and people miss the circle. That's so you have your duality, and you have to recognize the outer shell, which is the egg, which you'll know too well about from.
It's the all-encompassing part of it.
It's the same as we were explaining before, the two dual hemispheres, and then the third eye, as it's called. Well, you've got your yin and yang, left and right brain, and then you've got your egg, the third eye, that then encircles all three, which then creates the cord for then you to connect to the heart.
Yeah, the cord, the portal.
Yeah.
The portal to like all that we have ever been here. We're eternal. We're not just this life, right? And that circle is a container for the energy to be generated in. That's the vortex that you're doing when you shield, right? Mm-hmm. When you reinforce and connect in portal to the earth, to the connection that our body has here, and reinforce your shield and set it afire. And then you go into your heart and you light up that fire, your heart, your passions, your compassion, your understandings that you gain there when you stay in your heart. You're containing and reclaiming your own energy generation. You know, we've all been males, we've all been females in lifetimes, right? But this is a very old concept that the Gnostics called the Hieros Gamnos, right? And it's another part of reclaiming our energy generation. And this is how to beat their depleting, their siphoning of our energy, is by reclaiming our own, right? We don't have to do, I'm not even going to get into the stuff that's going on with the transgendered stuff, but you have an energy signature that is the sex of the body that you're in. You may have parts of your mind that are more masculine and parts of that are more feminine, but it's about balancing those and understanding how you've been hurt by women or hurt by men or gifted by women or gifted by men. You have to understand and untease the red thread of programming that's in you about how you've been allowed distortions and hooks to come into you about who you are in this present body, male or female, and just being okay with it. You know, I had a period where I was like into both sexes. I was bisexual for about a decade. So did my son. I handled it the same. He shifted out of it quicker than I did because I handled it differently with him. I told him that there's masculine and feminine in all of us. And basically let him know it's okay to explore what you feel to. You know, but understand you have the body that you have now, and it's meant to work with the opposite sex. But go ahead and explore it, right? So basically, I didn't shut him down. You know, I wasn't really shut down either, but then again, there was no parents or family involved. I was out of the house when I was 12. So, but, you know, in that decade, I experienced some of the worst aspects of women because of the jealousy and the envy part, and the way that they'll say one thing and mean something completely else. And I'm masculine in that way. I say what I mean, which means that people who have agendas don't like me, which is their problem, not mine.
Yeah. Well, we've spoken recently about the imbalance of women with Randy and Alan and on other shows. But you spoke before about the masculine and feminine, and people often mistake it for genitals, but we have masculine and feminine contained, whether you're a man or a woman, and this is the key aspect. To me, it's not a coincidence that the shows we've started doing, I don't know whether you've listened to any of them. We've got another one coming up Saturday with Randy and Alan. People really enjoy the three of us, male and female. Why? Because all three are in touch with their feminine side.
And you're masculine. That's the whole...
And the masculine.
Yeah.
All three of us are masculine, but all three of us, from an overview, have also gone into the feminine aspects of the caring and the sharing, and the nurturing and the support, which is traditionally a female role. So, and it's balanced, and that's why I think those shows connect with a lot of people. My vision, and it's shared by Randy and Alan. We're going to go forward with a show per month, and we're going to pick topics. I think this one this week is to do with taxes and also crypto. But we're going to be discussing all the going into details of the relevant topics that will come up, and no doubt there'll be masculine and feminine and a whole range of other deeper subjects also. And at the end of the show, we're going to provide solutions. We can all talk about problems, but don't come to me with a problem. If you're going to come with a problem, what is your solution? What next? I've asked this a lot. If you listen to the shows, I always ask questions, even in the must-listen to shows. These are the questions that you need to ponder on. But we've spoken about the imbalance of females and women, and I'd like your opinion on
that. It's again, I'm just in my mind's eye. I see the circle with the yin and yang, right? So they're spinning, and they're teardrop shaped because they're spinning, right? And it's about energy generation. And if men step up to be real men, women won't be able to be the mock men that they try to be, right? And there's a reason. I think there's a big reason why women have become as nasty as they have, and it has to do with that dark sisterhood and the ones that play God here. Really, this goes into there's a lot of layers of it. I was obsessed for a long time with Lilith, and because of certain names I've been called and certain things that I've seen or connect to an underworld entity, and I have no idea if it was mind effery or what, but because of the decades of experience and past life memories around it, this was part of my mother wound. It just kept coming at me all my life. So I needed to go deep into the Lilith stuff, and as much as I kind of lost it on that and didn't hear your warnings about researching too much. I've come to some understandings, regardless, and the demonization of women and their reaction to it is the result of results in this nastiness that a lot of them have in them, and I think that the interconnection of the males stepping into being real men, actively standing up for themselves and not letting themselves get cowed by these mothers that are awful to them as children. I made a point. I saw this book when my son was like a year old. It was called protecting the emotional life of boys. And I read that thing three times, and I made a point of raising him respectful of his maleness, and I was aware that at a certain point he would have to cross the bridge to being a man, and I wasn't on the other side of that bridge. I was a woman, so I made a point of getting all my friends that I felt were real men to take him out and go do stuff with them, so that he knew how to be a man. But you need that. This is how important the first family experience is. If you don't have that, you've got to go back and re-raise yourself, essentially, and this gets reflected in your children's, how their first partners, are going to be a reflection of your first family experience, So where I think that this dark sisterhood and the parents, the female parents, they really came at women. They attacked us on a much heavier level, because not only do we raise the families, we raise the children, in essence. So by doing that, by attacking women, they would destroy our families, which is the core. Like those first 7 years on the planet are really, really important. So basically, the myths around women are usually about women being demonized. Lilith, I feel, was the first woman here, and her being a succubus and a vampire, as you've spoken of in the shows, is the parents projecting what their actions here upon her. Now, even the name Lilith isn't who she was. That was a name container that was applied to her to be able to control what she, in essence, means to us. In some ways, she's the mitochondrial Eve, the first woman, right? So this is the original, at the depths of the core wound, is for the mother wound, is the destroyed by trauma mother, that eats her children, that raises them in such a way that the boys don't get to grow up to be men. You've seen this with your own kids. The mom that doesn't let her male children cross over that bridge and become real men, and then also competes with her daughters. That's what I experienced with my mother, and it worked. I don't talk to any of my sisters because of the success of that programming, and, the effects that I've seen in men that I've known that have also grown up with those daughters. It's awful, and it's not right. When I meet them and hear a bit of their story, I just want to give them a hug and tell them everything, the opposite of what they've been programmed to believe about themselves. So a lot of those myths, I remember when we were first met, we were talking about them, and you you said a lot of these goddesses, they're awful, and they go around re-victimizing the victim, Yeah. And I think a lot of those myths were basically twisted, because those ones that we were reading about were the later ones. They were the Greek and Roman ones. The myths that I think are really important to us. And a lot of men and the gods, or the demigods in those myths, the men are heroes, and I think men and women can be heroes, but they have to make the choice to go through the trials and the tribulations of the experiences, the initiations that those myths speak to. These gods and goddesses things, the myths are archetypes, and the archetypes are something that we all evolve through, whether we know it or not. Just read some Joseph Campbell, A Hero's Journey. A lot of our movies are based on these myths. A lot of books, and there's they're like symbols that rule our world, that they rule our subconscious, our unconscious, and in a lot of ways that the masculine and feminine, the hero Scamnos initiation and integration of our inner masculine and feminine is weaved throughout them. But you have to, the bird lands on the open hand. You have to read them in a certain way with a certain mindset and explore it, meditate on different parts of it that you feel attracted to. That's how you get where you're at on your own hero's journey, to reclaiming your energy generation capabilities and seeing where you're failing that initiation, that trial, right? So I think that these female Illuminatis, these covens, these dark scarlet sisterhoods, I think they co-opted many of them, these myths, to sort of, take us off our path by demonizing women, by in particular demonizing the ones that were about life regenerating, and the males that were about that, Odin, Chiron, the wounded healer, there's many of the most important myths are the ones that the layperson would read and think it's silly. The ones that are most popular are the ones that have been co-opted, and I think the Draco parents did a really good job of making women kind of recreate the worst part of the myths that they co-opted, right?
Yeah, the recent version is largely out of the Bible. I would describe the recent version. And now Abraham, Moses, and a few others, Shem, all them are not human.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them are just titles, the same as Ra is a title. Marduk played several of them. He played Set and Satan.
Mm-hmm.
People should watch I think it's a movie called The Greek Gods or something. You'll see what Set was up to.
Oh yeah, no, he just wanted to let Apophis have this creation and chomp it right up, which is basically the dark spiral I saw.
The harvest
across the universe. There's one Sumerian tale that's exactly Genesis or the Garden of Eden. It's the Hulupu tree, which is the earliest. It's ascribed to Lilith, but it's the earliest version of it. So get this, she's inside a tree of life, right? And you can see her because, one of those holes in the trees where a branch is broken off, it looks like a vagina. Not a mistake, right? That's in the trunk of the tree, which is basically our heart portal. She's in there. The hero, Gilgamesh, a frickin' giant, a Nephilim, a goddamn Draco giant here, comes to hack at the tree. And this is if you read it, I'm just telling it in a very truncated form, but you'll see exactly where the Garden of Eden story comes from. He goes to hack at the tree, and Lilith flies out of the tree because she doesn't want to get killed, and she runs off into the desert. And as he hits the tree, an owl flies off from the top of it. Now, look what they've done with the owls, right? Molech, they were sacrificed babies, that's all symbolic. But what the real symbol of the owl is wisdom. And it flies from the crown of the tree, from the tip of the sword. Our wisdom flew away, and our first woman was banished because she wouldn't go with the genetically modified Adam. You know, she rejected him. Oh, and women make it all out to be women's liberation. You know, this is the distortions. This is the programming that we have to let go of. We have to let that bird land on our open hand while we sit in our heart. You know, where the first mother is and the first father is. That's where we find ourselves.
Yeah.
You know?
As long as the bird that lands on the hand is not a blue avian and shits on you.
I know. Well, it's really, this is the thing. This question, like, what made me different? What made you different? What made anyone who's figured out how to stay in their heart a little bit better different? Well, because we've seen through the deceptions. We're a few layers in, veils in, we've popped the bubbles of deceptions, right? You know, I could see how Lilith you'd be convinced she's a vampire. But I maintain from my personal experiences that she was made out to be that because these dark sisterhoods and the parents wanted women to hate themselves so that they'd spread the hate.
Yeah.
And so until we stop this war, this inner war of men and women, or haves and have-nots, or any other version of this is part of the pendulum swing, right? Yeah, exactly. Any other point on it, we have to release the swing.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. You know, we're told we're in a patriarchal world, and I can get that, but there's always
these women are behind it.
There's always the hidden hand. You know, most of 9 of the last 10 parents, I don't know the demographics of the all 21, but I remember 9 of the last 10 parents were females. Mm-hmm. And then at least 9 of the 13 heads of the covens were females. And then you go back to 5,000 years ago, the last intervention with the Urs and the Rus, although there has been other minor ones. But the intervention in the Garden of Eden in India, and then you had the Kali Ma people.
Several Edens. Yeah.
Worshipping the Dark Mother, you know, and sacrificing people. And so there's been a history of leading females. You can go into Cleopatra, Joan of Arc, and all the others, and even up to more modern day, likes of Merkel, Hillary Clinton, Margaret Thatcher. None of them have projected their female side and have all gone into the darker elements of male, of control. Let's goose step all over people because we can, and seduced by the power. And that's the key, is just because you're in an important role does not mean you have dominion or domain over anybody else. It doesn't matter whether you're Trump or anybody else. You treat people the same. You speak to people the same, not at people. To people. You know,
to reclaim our own energy generation, unique to our vessel, unique to our soul's experiences here, unique to everyone behind us that has DNA in our very bodies here. Not this distorted form, you know, like that. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Women that act worse than men is how I put it.
Yeah.
But men aren't bad, and neither are women. It's just the programming, right? And it goes back to the distortions on these myths, right?
Yep.
The gods and gods in quote, goddesses and goddesses in quotes don't want us to be. They want us to attain in and of our own right where they're at. That's the point of this creation, right? But the myths aren't about the gods. They're for us to learn from. So they distorted them so that the women that decide to be like these sick, weird goddesses that go around stealing power from people and being manipulative and cowing, punishing the men and women. It's all about power. If an invention is broken, right, it's usually got something to do with its battery or however it makes energy, right? If something is broken, it's how it gets power. And if you're not generating it within yourself and you're taking it from others in these weird ways, then you're not in alignment with your spirit, with your heart.
Nope.
And religions is another whole thing. I mean, I was warned off of that quite clearly when I was 12. I know I've had past lives of being religious. I know it, and there's so many multi-layers to it. People just have to sit in meditation within themselves and figure out their red thread. And what I mean by red thread is there is a cord, not a portal. Well, it's a portal to feed your energy off into something else. There is a cord that is going through you that goes from this concept to that concept to these feelings to those thoughts to these actions that you need to pull out and tease, that is unique to your own experiences. Yep. And it's not just going to be this lifetime, but there will be imprints of it all in this one lifetime, because this lifetime right now for everyone is kind of important.
I want to touch on you and your research, as you mentioned, Lilith, and I, as you know, see patterns rather quickly, and Lilith in particular, when you were researching her.
I know, you hated it.
You tended to lose it upon doing research.
Well, yeah, because of the distortions I was seeing and what I knew in my core about her being the first woman of humanity, the first mother. Yeah, I know. I got really, so what can I say about that? Okay, so if you're a researcher at all, you probably know what I'm talking about. You can get stuck. You can, if you do it for too long and too focused, and especially when you're researching on something that you feel passionate about, that you know that it's part of your red thread that I spoke of, you need to chunk it, and you need to make sure that if you get stuck on any point of view or state of mind, denying all other perspective truths about what you're experiencing internally, vibrationally, and frequencies, your pendulum swing is at risk of getting very stuck, and so you have the memories, not just the thoughts, right? So you have your thoughts, and then you have your memories come, and experiences of being in some very awful situations in past lives came up in me then, that were triggered by this research. And it's very important that you chunk it, and that what I mean by is you do research gently. You don't dive into it like I did, because that was also part of how I lost it the 2 times that I took off and literally ran into the desert. So it's important to follow your inner drive to find out more about something that you've experienced, because that's how you get to the bottom of a shadow part in you. That's how you heal. But you have to be gentle about it. And if you're getting feedback from people that you live with or close friends that you're kind of losing it, listen to them.
Yes, the classic, the classic view I have and memory of was what I call the spiral technique.
Oh God!
Chloe go off onto research, and I'm going, oh dear, here we go. And then Chloe would spiral, and I tried to ease her out of it, and Chloe would push.
There was nothing you could have done. I had to go through it. I literally
did. That spiral
did.
became a vortex.
Yeah, it did. It did. But you know what? This me here right now, I feel great.
Good. That's good to
I
hear.
had to go through it though, and so let me get into this. Right. That's a big part of why I feel good right now. Because, I eventually heard what you said, even though I wasn't around you anymore, and it's about the ability to get the gold from the mud, from the dark,
Yeah.
right? So I had some really weird nightmares when I was a kid that I may have touched on in part one. I can't remember. I had this experience reoccurring of being hunted in a labyrinth. And, at the time they were pure nightmares. They were hell for me. I was being hunted by this massive minotaur thing. And these things were so real. Obviously this is the counterclockwise spiral beginning dreams, and I would be in this labyrinth. But the things that I did in those dreams, because I reacted differently in each one to survive, to get away. And what the labyrinth is another symbol that's on all sorts of caves, on all sorts of, from all over the world, right? And it's a symbol of ourselves finding our ways back to our center, to our heart. And for me, eventually after about a decade of these dreams, I realized that I was actually kind of beginning to learn how to master my psyche. I was learning how to transcend my difficult situations. Even I'd take those learnings into real life, right? I wasn't being chased by a minotaur in real life and trapped in some crazy, shifting labyrinth, but it helped me to learn how to start releasing, difficult experiences and make good from them. It gave me an inner strength to endure and to interpret heavy experiences into gold, and that's what the ancients call the alchemical path working, to make conscious what is in the depths of us and integrate what we've learned about ourselves in difficult, challenging times and turn it to wisdom, and that's where you start to access when you stay in your heart more, and the reuniting of the masculine and feminine within the Hieros Gamnos, that's the ultimate rebirth of ourselves. This integration is very stair-stepped. It's just like the initiation process, it's a reunification back to our whole selves. It's a ongoing, lifelong process. I definitely would say that it's not going to end as long as we're in this body. But that's why we're here, is to do it. It's to heal the wound, from the planet, the macro suns, to the micro, our inner sun within. And, it's not easy. That's why a lot of people aren't going to even relate to what I'm talking about, but like the heroes of the myths, we lose a lot, we get hurt, we hurt others, we make mistakes, but if we learn from the mistakes.
Yeah, that's the key.
Yeah.
Otherwise it just repeats,
That's it. And that's what
like the loops, micro to macro.
Yeah.
If we don't learn how to get out, you're just stuck in loops.
I know. I saw another layer of that. Sathikis did an interview with this woman, and he mentioned how at the destruction of Tara, Maldak, Tiamat, whatever you want to call that planet that became ours, that the tilt of the Earth happened and the poles froze up. And if you think of our sphere of influence, our auric field, with our toroidal sphere of our heart in the center, right? The inner sun of the planet, the poles freezing up. So if you see the toroidal field, energy coming out the bottom and back out around and back in through the top, if you take that to the planet level, the poles freezing up blocked us from the inner sun energy. Yep. So they blocked us from our hearts, right? So that's what we're fighting. That's the real war, is to fight for our connection back to our hearts. Connect into our heart's inner sun. Then the planet, she's doing it anyways. If we don't catch the wave, we lose out. We go on back to wherever we were before this. We don't, lose out, but we've lost out on this epic hero's journey that we came here for, right? So, well, not everyone's going to do it, right? There's a lot of people leaving.
Yes, I get that. I've covered that in the shows. People have difficulty with it. I understand that. But you mentioned not being attacked by minotaurs for real. I would argue that you were. This is part of the astral games.
Yes.
The inner war. That,
I was talking about mundane life, but yes, you're right. It affected my mundane life.
A lot of it has been shut down. That inner war.
But I had to decide to end it. It wasn't able to be shut down until I faced it.
Yep.
And that's what everyone has to figure out. That's why you need to go through all the layers of deception and figure out your inner ones. Our expression is blocked by lies. Our throat, our thymus, which is connected to our pineal, which is connected to our growth, used to be part of each other. Those two were also split. The thymus, in my energetic understanding of it, is the high heart. It's all, I've got Rosicrucian document breaking down body types, genetics, to glands being dominant in certain body types. And it indicates to me their study of our physical bodies and the type of energy that they could loosh from each body type here.
Yep.
So, yeah.
There's some people you can help and give help to.
Yeah.
And there's some people you can advise until the ruddy cows come home. But until they kind of recognize the issues in and of themselves, and recognize how their frequency impacts everywhere else, incoming and outgoing, and the connection between people is not, and certainly the frequency of people is not valued enough until we learn to value ourselves.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's that confidence and self-love. It's really, really important. Being honorable to ourselves means not lying to ourselves anymore, and our expression is balanced. We're able to, admire others and become what we admire instead of envying it and trying to take it from them or mess it up for them, which I know that you're experiencing right now from people that, shouldn't really be doing it. They're supposed to be a lot more wise than that. Valuing yourself is basically growing up, and it's time for us to grow up, the planet's wanting us to grow up. This is a seed planet. This planet has been around for a long time. Many different races have grown up on this planet, and it's been held back by this sealing off of us from the inner sun, both in our hearts and the planet. There's been a lot of games that have gone on in this universe to do with the groups that basically decimated many galaxies across this universe. That these are races that have disconnected completely from their spirit, their heart, and they just take what they want. And they've denied their mother and father. They've convinced themselves that planets aren't alive, that suns aren't alive, yet they seem to know how to trap them in energy inverting cubes and co-opt them to take the core of their planet or their sun to be able to build the weapons that they do that destroy planets and suns.
Not normally can't.
No, I hope not. You know, I've had experiences seeing these core crystals of stars and suns, and I know you have too. And the concept that what seeing it alone meant that a whole planet and all the life on it, or the whole galaxy that was supported by that sun, is now dead because of some group that convinced themselves that they could go and do this. You know, this is some of the stuff that I was processing the last 3 years. And it is unconscionable. It is just beyond understanding for me. You know.
Right.
So I know you want to wrap things up. I want to just.
I was just going to go into a music break, but we can.
Oh yeah. Okay, go for it.
Right.
Sorry, I was in a place of reaction there, remembering that grief. This is it, guys. This is how it happens.
The grief is about holding back the river, is it not? And letting it go. Our river has gone. Been flowing far too much, but we've managed to put a dam and reverse some of it. And so
it's been flowing to the wrong place, yes.
This next song will display that. I was going to play She's a Little Runaway.
Oh, thanks.
You know me and my sick humour. But I'm going to play The Humbling River. I think
it's about us reaching out to each other and helping each other across. Just ignore the programming behind the word angels in the lyrics. To me, that's about reclaiming more of your frequencies. Go for it. Well, I want to get into the vision. Sorry.
The spiral. That was quite important to you in many aspects of your life. It's kind of gone from a very young age, and I presume it's still ongoing. So perhaps you can talk about some of to do with the spiral.
Well, it has to do with the distortions of the masculine and the feminine here, because it was universe-wide. It had to do with the war on this creation, and it echoes the ripples into each one of us in terms of our own connection to our inner mother and father and our experience of our mothers and fathers. You know, we need to grow up. We do not need parents. You know, the myths of the gods and the goddesses are archetypes that were meant to be guides to get back on our true paths, not derailed by these men who played these false gods with these dark sisterhoods behind them. You know, and the dark sisterhoods, the men wouldn't have been able to accomplish it if they didn't have the dark sisterhoods. You know, there is some unique things about women's energies. We do bring babies into being. We have a little bit more of source creation energy running through our bodies. And when we're in a female form, we can do a lot of good or a lot of damage in a different way than a soul in a male body. That's why it's so important that we grow up and men be men and women be women. And I'm not talking barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen women. I'm talking about women that are balanced and nurturing and compassionate and and healers, and men can do that too, but they're also their directness to act, to come from very common sense. This is the rational, the logical thinking. And then there's the softer, more holistic caregiving thinking. This is the mixture of masculine and feminine in each one of us, regardless of the body that we're in at the time. Right? So the reason why I'm talking about this is because of these visions that I want to share, because the masculine and feminine, the Eros Gamnos integration, the alchemical, the inner alchemical reunion to whole self within is connected to what the planet is doing right now. I say trying because I'm still trying to integrate into surfing that wave myself, right? She's doing it. And it's up to us to understand what I'm talking about. We are all connected. I have had more than one vision, and you have too, Tommy, of the interconnectedness of all our soul lights on the planet. When one lights up, others around that light up. And it's conversely the other way. If someone's a real bitch, then the others around them dim. And we have to understand this. This new age thing, we are all one. And they go and act very toxically, dimming lights around them and projecting that because they're not getting what they want. That's energy vampirism. That's acting like a parent. That's acting like an energy vampire, and that's not what we need to do. So that's not the right. We are all one. The we are all one part that I'm talking about is the energy that we were given when we were birthed as a spirit, and then when we went into a body. That energy is neither created nor destroyed. It is only changed. It is only transmuted. Well, guess what? If you don't own your heart and balance your inner masculine and feminine and generate your own energy, or keep generating that energy, that yin-yang wheel, then someone else will take it from you, or you'll get it in twisted ways from others, right? So this is what the masculine, feminine, the mother, father want us to do here. They want us to develop spiritually. When you sit in your heart, you're developing spiritually, but you have to make a choice to do it every day, right? And this is one of the concepts that man filled with dimensional space at the river of humanity dreams that I kept having. This is one of the concepts that he imparted to me, this, and it came back to me in my mid-20s when I came across this old myth about the thorn that protects the rose. And this re-triggered this whole concept that I was given before I was 10 years old about the masculine and feminine, right? The rose is the feminine creational frequencies that draws up from the well of the undifferentiated source of energy of all of creation, this vast pool. And she draws it up her stem, and she works with it and pushes it all the way up to the top so that the rose can bloom. And that's her crown of creation. Well, that's symbolic of us. And guess what protects the rose from it being cut? The thorn. That's the masculine, right? And this protection, she needs this protection not because she's weak, but because the feminine's weak. But it's different. We're strong in a different way than men. We can bring forth children. We can draw forth energy from creation to create new life. But the men have to be men and do their role too. And that's when, if we do a few generations of this, of men being men and women being women, and we are each playing our roles, then humanity will heal and be able to move forward. Well, they will be moving forward as they heal, right?
Yeah.
So we both draw up energies from the void, right? Not from the void. I'm having a problem with that meaning now.
Singularity.
From singularity, from the source of creational energies. It is undifferentiated. I felt that about it because I've been in it. It's everything and nothing. Absolutely. I mean, and those are the closest words I could come up with to describe it, but it's much more than that.
The reason why it's everything and nothing is it's waiting for the creator, which is all of us, to create something that becomes what it should be.
It's the raw substance. Exactly. You're right. Right. So we're connected. The micro to macro teachings here, because this is from those dreams, we are all one, is the interconnection of us all being here now from the same source of energies. And I'm not talking just source, I'm talking this creation source outside of this. Right? And even this universe, I'm aware it has a sphere. It has a membrane around it to contain it. So the energy is all here and it's all in us. That's how we're connected. It's not some new age concept. It's old and it's past and it's future and it's now. And you know what I mean if you stay in your heart. It's very multi-dimensional in layers. So when you experience it, you can go into different layers of it and see the concepts that I'm just touching on. Right? I mentioned just a bit earlier when I started to get triggered, because there's still some pain in me about this. In 2016, I had this vision of the planetary consciousness, having been in one of the clear stasis cubes that you and I both have seen beings in, and the amount of pain that is experienced by them while they're in this, and the other outer layers of the reason for this cube, clear kind of stasis cube, is it inverts the energy of the being that's trapped in it. And I had this, I don't know from which perspective this is, but I felt like when I saw this, I was being put to sleep. And I heard these words, now we can remake her as we see fit. And this was in 2016. This began weeks of depression. And you remember when this happened, I told you about it, and I was distraught. What the hell is this about? Can planets, can people, who would do this? This is just as like unfathomable to me as whole races convincing themselves that planets aren't alive and they can be owned, And it filled me with dread. But there was an understanding within me when I heard these words, now we can remake her as we see fit, that a decision was made to stay with this planet. And I have no idea why I had these experiences as from the perspective I was. But it did give me, as much as it opened up that wound about the masculine and feminine imbalance, the schism that was made between us from the macro to the micro. I think perhaps it came to me in this way because of my macro to micro concepts that were, I was having all my life to show me the interconnectedness of life and how to go back in and fix it, how to heal it, right? But there's an understanding in me that this planet, like the other planets in this system gave up. They bailed. Saturn gave over to the ones playing gods. Awesome. And there's an understanding in me that yeah.
Mars and Venus also.
Well, I'm not sure about Mars. I think Mars was a forced Of course. But yeah, I know that Venus did. Well, because Lucifer, right? He kind of went insane for a while, right? That's his. But so there's an understanding in me that we are lucky. Our seed planet, our planetary consciousness did not give up on us, and we need to make right by that sacrifice that she made of herself. And there's other myths that speak to the masculine sacrificing himself for life's right to contain and generate and learn how to wield their power in a balanced way, not in an imbalanced way. And, there's, obviously the obvious one in Christianity is Jesus, but, Jesus, that whole thing is so twisted up. He sacrificed himself for our sins. The sin that they created. Anyways,
eventually that just turned into a savior program.
Well, that was the whole point of it, right? So the sacrifice that our planetary mother and father, our universal mother and father, made needs to be honored by ourselves, honoring our own path to healing and uniting the masculine and feminine. The thorn, the masculine of the thorn of the rose, I think the masculine went down first because he was the protector. And that's why we're missing a few sons.
Yep.
And then the feminine, the mother of this planet, so far as I've been experienced, she went under, but she wouldn't leave. And neither did the masculine. They're still here. But they transmuted, changed their energies to be able to stay. Because they're committed to this creation. They want this creation to continue. In all it's been through and all they've been through. We have to make the choice to honor their sacrifice so that we have the chance to make ourselves sacred again. And we make ourselves sacred by reclaiming, remastering, knowing ourselves, and knowing how to generate our own energy from within so that we don't participate in these he said, she said, judgmental wars. They paid us such a great price. I have viscerally experienced it. And we owe it to ourselves. We don't owe it to them. We owe it to ourselves to honor what we came here to do. And, if you want to read one of the myths that really speak to it, read the Norse, because it's pre-Christian, the Norse myth of Odin. Essentially right now we're in Ragnarok, where everything fucked up needs to be destroyed so that it can begin again in the way that it was meant to. There's so many layers of distortions overlaid over so much of that, but Odin's sacrifice, in a way, is where Jesus' sacrifice came from, because it predates it all. He took 9 steps, and then he fell down dead. And each one of the 9 steps that he took is symbolic of us traversing the 9 layers of deceptions in ourselves that we need to clear to get back to our core self at the center of our labyrinth, right?
It's also
and they're
is it not symbolic of the 9 realms?
Yes,
and also
there's
symbolic of the 8 planets with the sun, with the heart. So
there used to be another one. Yeah, there used to be 9. There used to be 12. But yeah, so yeah, it is. And so he hung
Right.
himself upside down like the fool in the tarot deck. Those are also archetypes on the tree of life to show us the way back to ourselves in our hearts, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
With the mother in the tree, right?
And not the tree of Darth and Kabbalah and all that
Well, yeah,
nonsense.
well, Doth, actually, if you overlay the human onto the tree, Doth is placed where the heart is, which is interesting because the Doth is death. So that's what I used to think like 6 years ago. But it's actually Pluto. It's us reclaiming ourselves from the underworld. Then we are clear of our heart, clear to our heart. If we go through the shadow work and all the initiations and the crying and the screaming and the freaking out and fucking things up for ourselves, and we come out through the other side, you can stay in your heart better. I'm telling you that because I've gone through it. And the heart is exactly where Doth is. I'll send you an image of it and you can post it. So they've demonized that too. They've made that as something, right?
It's the,
Pluto is Hades. It's the underworld god, right? Lilith is associated with Persephone, the underworld queen. Lilith is actually about psychological balance. Those hemispheres of the brain being integrated and balanced so that you can stay in the heart. And, yeah. So.
well, that balance, the 45-55 covers many aspects. It's the heart balance, the mind.
Yep.
If everything was in balance, which is the key here, you can have a matriarchy as long as it's 55% and there's 45% patriarchy,
Yep.
or vice versa. And of course we also have the dance of the dark, and of course the New Age crew insist on eliminate the dark. Well, that's what happened with the original universe and this source, as I understand it. And the dark came in and played havoc, and it was 87%.
There wouldn't be light
dark.
without the dark, but it's the quality of this dark, the fact that it was the intent behind the dark magicians doing it was to divide and split all the trauma, destroying a whole planet, well, several planets in this one galaxy.
Thousands.
And billions in the whole universe one.
Yeah.
It was like my heart just shattered. But then it also had a chance to heal. And that's when I first took off and came back. After I had that vision, I came back because I realized more of what I was hurting from. And it has to do with this shattering of our consciousness from the millennia of trauma. And it's just been coming at us. So we haven't been able to catch up. But now we need to. Because this planet and this creation, it's time for it to move on. It's just time.
Yep.
And if we don't do it from our inner sun out, we're not going to be able to ride that wave. But also don't beat yourself up and get freaked out when I'm saying here, because it's all right if you don't, like, even the fact that you've made it this goddamn far here now.
Yep.
When you get out of here, when you go, leave this body, everyone's gonna be like, whoa, dude, you did it. You got that far. Holy cow, that was brutal. Because everyone's been watching us, right? From the outside going, whoa, So don't beat yourself up, but try at least.
Probably lost on many. Because the propensity on this planet now is to focus on the negative aspect, the negative news,
yes,
and negative people. The reality is, this is probably since way back in ancient times with the Urs, the most historic time ever to be on this planet. and that gets overlooked by many as they're seeking external things, the trust funds to come out, or mass arrests, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the amount of winning and change that has taken place in this last decade alone supersedes thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even to the knowledge that's been put out in THI about the peace treaty back in August of 2016, it changed everything. But because it wasn't external, and because Trump didn't announce it, or Obama didn't announce it, or some other clown politician didn't announce it, it's not real. But it is. You know, because all of a sudden, over the last 3 years, as predicted, the ET narrative has fell apart. Why? Because there's no more interference. There's still elements that we're dealing with, and I will be addressing that on Thursday.
We are the ETs.
In essence, we are.
And it's not something we shouldn't be focusing on them anymore, because we just need to focus on healing ourselves.
You know,
and part of those memories may be ET based, as in you in another vessel on another planet.
Yeah.
But that's not what we need to be focused on.
No,
we're human now.
Yes, yeah. And humans have control of this planet.
That's right.
And it's not a win. I said this last week. Winning, your versions of win are completely different from the real versions of winning.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a win. It's an opportunity.
Yes.
And a last saloon opportunity. This planet is not going to allow adults to stay children.
No.
And the majority of this planet, adults are children.
Yeah.
And they have to grow up very, very quickly.
Or they're getting kicked off, because there's a bigger picture here that we're not understanding, and that's why I told people not to freak out if they don't catch the wave, because the whole point is that seed planets go on, that creation goes on. And if you're not going to grow up and do your due diligence to make yourself sacred again and generate your own energy, then you are out.
Yeah, no more harvesters.
No more harvesting from others. No more interfering or derailing others as you derail yourself. Your frequencies are not going to be able to make it.
No. And
know that what I said is for real. I've experienced that in spiral visions I've had in multiple lifetimes, that in experiencing other people's spirals of experiences of their spirit alongside of mine. I've seen and felt other beings make a different choice and not choose to stay with the evolutionary trajectory of this planet. And I've seen them and felt them fall away. And I had to deal with accepting that choice. It was their choice. And it's not a wrong choice. It's their choice, their perspective, their truth. But if you're not going to help with what's going on here, she might shake you off, and you got to accept that. We might lose family.
Yeah.
You know, you have to just accept it. Each individual spirit soul here has the right to choose to bow out, and that is not a bad thing. If they made it this far, they're going to get several accolades. Several. And they will have gained a lot of wisdom. You gain wisdom even if you mess up. Even these dark sisterhoods are gaining wisdom from this. Yep. But if you don't choose to allow this creation to become sacred again, by making worthy the sacrifice that the huge creator energies inputted into this creation, then you are not going to be getting to be part of what is to come. So, absolutely. And that's huge what is to come is really big. I've had tiny glimpses of what is to come or what is possible to come. And it is amazing. But we're in frickin' Ragnarok right now. We're in the Kali Yuga, as they call it. And it's time to buck up.
Yep.
If you want to get there, Tommy's been telling you what to do. I've been telling you what to do. Sadiqus is telling you what to do. Thomas Sheridan's even telling me, he's another one that's been demonized. He's a pedophile. He's not a frickin' pedophile. You know, he really...
Shane as well. Randy.
Thomas Sheridan, Shane, Randy, they've all been telling us what to do. They all have, and we don't hear them. The Cassandra syndrome, right?
Yep.
Like, you know, but, you know, Thomas Sheridan, he did this wonderful video about sacrifice, what it really means to remake something, to remake something to be sacred again. And it's not freaking what, again, the deceptions layered onto it, inversions. It's not sacrifice. We hear that, sacrifice children. No. To make something sacred and honor the interconnection of all life is you go out into nature and you leave an offering. And yes, the animals eat it. But that's honoring the interconnection of all life. The biological life systems on this planet are all connected. When we go out into nature, a healing space for us, we can make sacrifices by leaving gifts out there. And I do all the time. I leave like pieces of art that I put a lot of energy into creating. I have left food, not in a while, but I should. You know, that's how you make sacrifices. That's the old meaning. And that is how you can honor the interconnection of all life here. Yeah. It's the opposite of what they made sacrifice out to be.
Well, there's a piece that I'll be covering on Thursday about fire. You know, fire is sacrificial, but it also regenerates.
Well, I covered that in part one.
In the forest.
Yeah, it absolutely does. There's a succession of species that come back after fire that is absolutely renews the soil, the mineral balance. Fire, for in terms of the alchemical, is the burning away of everything that's blocking us. And then water, I did cover this in part one, right? Water washes it away.
Yep.
You know, washes the ashes and cleans what's left. Yes, I did. Covered in part one. It's the spiritual fire is terrifying, but it is what regenerates you. It is genuinely what you need to you have to face your fear to walk through it. As a kid, I walked through walls of fire. And when I had the bravery to do so, I was gifted on the other side of this wall of fire with like amazing teachings that helped me survive the labyrinth dreams, that helped me survive my waking life in a physically and abusive household. You know, it's very important that we learn to kindle and grow strong, both the fire on the outer sphere of our auric field. Right? Tommy, you taught me that. Light it up with fire.
Yes.
Right? And now I'm focusing, because I've gone through enough clearings, on the fire in my heart. You know, this is creational fire.
We often hear the word fired up the heart. Mm. We also starting a car. What do you say? You fired it up.
It's the engine. Fire up the engine, right? This is our energy generation spot. It's
there's examples like the 45-55. There's examples that go through everyday life. Mm. You know, micro, macro again. You know, and that's where the real connectedness is the micro, macro. You know, your brain looks like the universe. Why does it do that? Because it is. The heart, the same. You know, and it's that evolutionary creational dance.
I'm just laughing because the brain also looks like a walnut, which has a bunch of minerals and vitamins in it that's good for the brain. It's everywhere. These interconnections are everywhere.
The trouble is it's being cracked down the middle. There's a lot of people who are cracked, use a UK term, not sane.
But we can reforge ourselves anew. We can reforge ourselves, but we only do that from within our hearts, and we have to forge fire.
Forged by fire, yeah.
Yeah, and then you temper it in water, which gives it the final seal of strength, right? And that's the goal. That's why what we call gods and goddesses, these myths were left here, you know?
And what's the main forging? The sword.
That's right. Yep, that's right.
Right, we've probably come to the end of the show. I generally let the host, which is you, have the final say. So what would you like to say to the listeners before we finish with your final song?
Well, I hope that people have understood through all my scatteredness that we've been given a great gift, and even if you think you can't face what you need to face, I think you can. I believe in you, and I want to thank Tommy for believing in me. And I want to thank anyone else for believing in me, and just get more confident and own your energy and end that inner war so the outer one can end, so that we can get on to recreating this creation as we want, not as they want.
Absolutely. Right. Thanks to Chloe for being brave and coming on, not only once but twice. This is what these shows are all about. It's not about me. It never was about me. It's about us all. We've all got traumas and stories and life battles to tell. And often what I've noticed, was I do notice it, people who have been on these shows have released their own throat chakra, of which is quite prominent around this planet. They're strangled at the throat chakra. People are also trapped in the gut, which is the solar plexus, which is when you overlay it on 7 soul developments, is the astral. And this is this life and creation dance again that we have to overcome, and you have to get over the astral into the mental planes and master them, which then creates the sword and fires up the heart. And that's, a key thing. If you're blocked at the throat chakra, you're going to struggle in life. You always are. I was known as the quiet man, the one who never spoke for the first 32 years of my life, so I know it too well. And so I hope Chloe and Holly's been on recently, and Michelle's been on recently, and all the others, Ra and Willow have been on, and some of the men, Glenn, have all gained a lot of benefit of coming on this show and telling their story, because your story is just as important as his story, except it's more real, more truth. So we're going to end with this final song, and I'll see you all on Thursday. Bye for now.